Number 25. Václav Havel. As a Czech playwright, essayist, poet, dissident, and politician, Václav Havel was the last president of Czechoslovakia and the first president of the Czech Republic. During his time, he was widely acclaimed for his human rights work across Eastern Europe and has been named one of the most influential figures of the 20th century. Number 24. Sari Nusseibeh. Rather than support attacks on Israel the way some of his fellow countrymen did, this Palestinian philosophy professor decided to focus on proactively helping his people in the midst of the bloodshed. His supporters believed that his passive, Gandhi-like struggle was what warranted him the Nobel Peace Prize. Number 23. Eleanor Roosevelt. More than just the First Lady of a former U.S. president, Eleanor Roosevelt was as politically active as her husband. In fact, she was the one who led the first mission of the United States to the United Nations, allowing the U.S. to recognize how significant the UN really was. As the woman behind the UN Commission on Human Rights, as well as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the influence of Eleanor Roosevelt in the lives of many people remains until today. Number 22. Pope John Paul II. Pope John Paul was acclaimed as one of the most influential leaders of the 20th century. He's credited with helping to end communist rule in his native Poland and eventually all of Europe. Number 21. Dorothy Day. One of the most significant personalities during the Great Depression, Dorothy Day organized the Catholic Worker Movement, a pacifist movement during the Second World War. Her mission was to help families rebuild their lives and promote peace by means of communal living and distributed wealth. Her movements eventually spread to both Canada and Europe and are still active today. Number 20. Ken Saro-Wiwa. Known as the Gandhi of Nigeria, Ken was a part of the Ogoni people, a minority in Nigeria, and he'd always been honest about his grudges towards the government of his own country, especially when it came to the displacement of his people and the exploiting of their resources for the gain of the Nigerian government. In response to this, he formed an organization which aimed to protect the rights of the minority and led nonviolent demonstrations on behalf of the persecuted. Number 19. Fazal Hasan Abed. Fazal played a critical role in the rebuilding of Bangladesh after the Indo-Pakistani Wars of Separation. After the war, Bangladesh became an autonomous country but was left severely devastated. To help his nation recover, he created and led BRAC, or the Bangladesh Rural Advancement Committee, a developmental organization that aimed to rebuild infrastructure in Bangladesh and help the people of his nation to re-establish their ravaged homes. This organization eventually became one of the largest developmental organizations in the world, with 8 countries under its fold, helping more than 100 million impoverished people worldwide. Number 18. Corazon Aquino. Known as the first female president in Asia, Corazon established a good number of democratic and humanitarian reform programs in the Philippines following the ousting of the former president Ferdinand Marcos. The start of her reign marked the end of the dictatorial rule in the Philippines as she instituted a new constitution that emphasized the democracy of the Filipino people. Number 17. Irena Sendler. A Polish Roman Catholic nurse/social worker who served in the Polish underground during World War II, she smuggled some 2,500 Jewish children out of the Warsaw Ghetto and provided them with false identity documents, saving them from the Holocaust. Number 16. Mahatma Gandhi. Although most people know Gandhi, and he would probably be the first person to pop into their head when thinking of peace prizes, he never actually won the Nobel. His influence, however, has been undeniable. Number 15. Dr. Fang Ho. A former consul general of the Chinese embassy in Vienna, Dr. Fang is often dubbed as China's Schindler. During the 1940s, the Chinese ambassador to Berlin ordered Fang not to issue visas to prevent Jewish emigration. Fang, however, refused to follow the order. Instead, he issued around 2,000 visas in a span of 6 months and saved thousands of Jews. Number 14. Stephen Biko. Following the imprisonment of Nelson Mandela in 1964, Stephen took the reins and became the head of the South African anti-apartheid movement. He was the one who founded the Black Consciousness movement and promoted the Brotherhood of Man. Along with his active involvement in the promotion of unity among all nations, he preached nonviolence among his subordinates. He dedicated his life to leading peaceful protests until the apartheid police sought to kill him. Number 13. Abdul Sattar Eddy. Pakistani Abdul Sattar was the great leader of the Eddy Foundation. As a philanthropist, he used his own meager funds to establish a humble medical shop in Karachi and help out those people who needed his knowledge in the field of medicine. He allowed the people of Karachi to obtain the medicines they needed at a very low cost and urged many of his friends to donate medical equipment and drugs for the poor. Number 12. Oskar Schindler. Probably the most well-known member of the Avenue of the Righteous, Oskar Schindler saved around 1,200 Jews from the hands of the Nazis by providing jobs for them in his own weapons factories during the Second World War. Though he knew that his life was in jeopardy, he never stopped employing the Jews and even paid millions to the Nazi Party just to compel them to leave the Jews to him. Number 11. Jose Figueres Ferrer. As the man who served as president of Costa Rica for 3 terms, Jose granted both men and women equal rights to vote. According to him, although men were generally stronger than women, the mental faculties of both genders had no difference. He was also the one who pushed for the abolition of the army of Costa Rica, as he believed that the police force was more than enough to enforce the domestic laws of the land. Number 10. Cesar Chavez. Dubbed the Martin Luther King of Mexico, Cesar was the co-founder of the National Farm Workers Association in California, which is now called the United Farm Workers. He formed the association to help improve the working conditions for common Latino laborers in his country. Number 9. Pope Pius XI. Prior to the Second World War, Pope Pius delivered a speech in front of 250,000 pilgrims in Lourdes, France, stating that the Nazis were nothing but miserable plagiarists who dressed up old errors with new tinsel. Before the start of the war, he played a large role in defending the Jews and Christians being persecuted under Nazi and Soviet regimes. Number 8. Jacques Delors. A French economist and politician, Jacques was the 8th president of the European Commission and was the first man to have served the Commission for 3 consecutive terms. As the Minister of Economics and Finance under President François Mitterrand, he actively promoted both the acceptance of the market economy and alignment with social democracy in Europe. Number 7. Liu Xiaobo. A human rights activist who initiated political reforms in China, Liu pushed actively for the end of communist rule in the country. Of all the things he'd done for his nation, it was his enduring and nonviolent fight for fundamental human rights that allowed him to earn the respect of the world. Despite his previous arrest on grounds of subversion of state power, Liu did not stop from making a historical transformation in his beloved China. Number 6. Fitch Not Han. A Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk, Fitch was a peace activist who dedicated his life to participating in the peace movement and upholding nonviolent solutions to the conflicts going on in his country. He spent most of his life in the Plum Village Monastery in South France, but traveled extensively giving talks to thousands of people. Number 5. John Lennon. Although he's been a controversial figure, his music, his philanthropy, and his devotion to peace have left a lasting impact on the world. Number 4. Bradley Manning. Love him or hate him, the man famous for leaking classified government documents has enough of a following to have been nominated for the Peace Prize. Although he's almost certainly the most controversial figure on this list, what list is complete without controversy? Besides, that's what the comments are for. Number 3. Morgan Tsvangirai. As the head of the movement for democratic change, Morgan was the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe and the first Zimbabwe national to have ever been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. His nomination was on account of his governance in South Africa and the freedom of his people. Number 2. Father Nguyen Van Ly. Vietnamese Father Nguyen was a Roman Catholic priest who got involved in several pre-democracy movements in Vietnam, for which he was imprisoned for 15 years. During his imprisonment, he continued to lead several nonviolent protests. In 2002, he was awarded the Homo Homini Award for human rights activism in Vietnam. Number 1. Dr. Seema Samar. A female physician who founded the Shahada Organization and Shahada Clinic, Dr. Seema was a human rights and democracy advocate in her native country of Afghanistan. She founded the Shahada Organization when she recognized and was disturbed by the lack of health facilities for women and children. Ever since then, she has been actively opposing the extremism and injustice that is commonly accepted as the status quo.